Howdy, guys, and welcome to Survivor Season 42's recap of the final 2-hour episode. Yes, indeed, we're finally there. We're going to find out who the sole survivor is. So welcome aboard. Welcome to Cliff Notes, broadcasting from a long way away from the island of Fiji. I'm excited. First of all, I'm excited because we're the finale. It's a 2-hour long episode. But I'm excited about the final five that we've got. I'm excited about the way this season has played out. I've really enjoyed it. I think Survivor, it's the 42nd season, but I really feel in a lot of ways they've stepped up their game with some of the twists, the challenges, etc. So I'm going to hate for it to end, but I'm excited to find out who the winner is. Now, I mentioned a 2-hour finale, so a lot took place this evening, so let's get right into it. We'll start with a little bit of a refresher from last week. I mentioned we've got our final five. Yes, coming in sixth place, we lost Omar last week. I hated to see it. I was a big Omar fan. But we lost Omar last week, leaving us with our final five of Lindsay, Marianne, Jonathan, Mike, and Romeo. Now, as we start the episode, I'm thinking in my mind, who do I think has the best chance of winning this thing, making it to the final tribal? Who is the biggest long shot? Here's my very unprofessional opinion, guess of who's got the chance to win from the best chances to the worst chances. I'm probably going to Lindsay as my top choice, followed by Marianne, followed by Jonathan, followed by Mike, and then followed by Romeo, which brings up another question. Romeo's in this final five. Has he positioned himself to be the GOAT of the season, that pretty much may be guaranteed to make it to that final tribal council, just because everyone else at this point in the game is going to want to drag Romeo along with them? Perhaps. Does that mean that he's got a great chance of winning the final title? No, probably not. But I think he probably is just almost guaranteed to make it to to that final tribal council, no matter what happens. But having said that, let's see what happens with the episode itself. So first of all, we do have still, at one point, there were so many twists and advantages out there. What's gotten trimmed down, we don't have nearly as many right now. We've got two people with immunity idols. Mike and Marianne both have immunity idols. They have to play them. The last time they can play them is at the final five tribal council. So you would expect they're going to play them this coming up tribal. So really it means that this could turn into a fight between Jonathan, Romeo, and Lindsay in terms of figuring out who's going to go home. Who's the biggest threat of those three? Lindsay, Jonathan. As I mentioned just a second ago, I think Romeo probably just about has a free pass into the finals. So it seems like the first tribal that we have, the next person going home, probably is going to be a battle between Jonathan and Lindsay. They've been battling it out all season. They both deserve to be where they're at, but being such strong, strategic, or competition type threats makes it tough. There's been a bit of a target on both of them. It doesn't help that they've been gunning for each other as well. So I think those two are the biggest danger. Really probably going to come down to who wins this immunity idol to see which of those two goes home. Now, we do see a little bit of a confession. Marianne feeling pretty confident. She did great last episode. Yeah, she was kind of one of the leading forces that got Omar out of the game. I think Marianne's strategic portion of her game has really accelerated here in the last couple of episodes. And she's talking about that she's feeling pretty confident about her position and her ability. She can see now the path that takes her to the final tribal council. And I can kind of see it as well. We've got Romeo, who has decided, poor Romeo. I know what it's like to be on Big Brother and be on the block every other week. Well, Romeo, I think, is feeling the same thing. His name has continually gotten thrown out, tribal council after tribal council. He's playing from the bottom. He's feeling at that point he's trying to make it just one more tribal council. And so to help that along, he is now telling everyone else that he has an immunity idol as well, that he found earlier, that he has kept hidden, that he's got that he's got the immunity council. The rest of the other four can't really believe Romeo at this point, right? I mean, if Romeo truly did have an immunity idol, would he have not played it in one of these past few weeks when it seemed there was such a strong chance that he was going to head out the door? If he had an idol and he hadn't played it so far, That's a risk taker there. I'm not sure that anyone else is necessarily buying it, but he has created a fake idol in case anyone asks or wants to see it, just to further the story he's trying to tell at this point. I'm not sure if that was the right strategy for Romeo to present that the idol itself, as opposed to maybe still just laying low and letting the other targets go after each other. But we do see Romeo trying to play some game at the end and try to ensure that he can make it just another day or two further down the road. We do see with Romeo being a little bit worried about that, we also see it seems like all the guys really gunning for Lindsay. Romeo, Mike, Jonathan. Lindsay seems like she has a little bit of support from Marianne, but that's about it. I mentioned earlier, Lindsay or Jonathan, and as we watch this episode, we watch the edit, it certainly seems like Lindsay may be a little bit lower on the totem pole even than Jonathan is at this point in time. So with all that being said, we get the first immunity challenge of the evening. Well, let me take that back. Let me throw out maybe the last twist of the season as well. Before we get the last immunity challenge, one additional advantage, not to be found, but to be won at this point. It's a word scramble to find an advantage that's going to help in the immunity challenge. And I got to say, thank you, Survivor. I love the challenges that Survivor lets us play along as well. And I certainly did this. I paused the TV and you basically have a bunch of words that are all scrambled. So you have to unscramble the words, the spelling of the words. Once you've got all those words, then you have to shift the order in order to read the message. And whoever can unscramble it first, read the message, can then go off and try to find this advantage. And we got to play along as well, which I always enjoy. We definitely see at this point in time who the remaining puzzle solver is in this group of five. And it's not Jonathan. It's not Mike. No, it's Lindsay. Lindsay has definitely shown that she is a cut above everyone else when it comes to the puzzles. She solves it so much faster than the other four. And the phrase is something about finding the advantage tucked away in the big toe of the sleeping giant. She immediately takes off. She's looking at trees. She's looking everywhere. Eventually, she finds it at the top of a stone formation that looks like a giant's feet sticking out into the water a little bit. She finds the advantage. She finds it before the other four. Even though the other four are working together, she still finds this thing before they even can figure out the scramble of the word puzzle. So definitely Lindsay deserves this advantage. The question now is it going to be a huge advantage in this immunity battle or not so much? We've seen a little bit of each over the years, but she has found it, so she's feeling a little bit comfortable. Lindsay understands how absolutely vital it is that she win this next immunity challenge. She's figuring if she doesn't, she's probably going home, and I can't argue it at that point in time. So we see this next immunity idol, and I got to say, it's a huge set. I love as we get towards the end of the season, the Survivor set designers really have gone 110%. They've got a beautiful challenge set up. We've seen something very similar before. A lot of different obstacles, different stations that everyone has to complete each of these 5 or 6 stations. And at each station, you'll untie a bag that's got puzzle pieces. You'll cross the station, a rope bridge or planks across ropes, things like that. Once you get all your puzzle pieces into the main area, you then have to solve a big circular puzzle. If you do that first, you get immunity, and as a little extra reward, you get pasta and some food, etc. Some wine, some garlic bread. Sounded pretty good, especially if you've been sitting on the island for 20-something days with nothing but coconut water and a little handful of rice every day. So immunity and some food to go along with it. And at this point in time, we find out that Lindsay's advantage seems pretty big. All these puzzle pieces that are tied onto the post apparently have 6 knots tied. So when you get to a puzzle piece, you have to untie 6 knots before you can then do that little obstacle for that station. Lindsay's puzzle pieces, however, because she won the advantage, only has 1 knot. Untying 1 knot versus 6 seems huge to me. It seems incredibly huge. So Lindsay definitely has an advantage. But as I've said all season long, does it really matter? Because as I've said all season long, Jonathan takes the early lead. he actually begins solving the puzzle first before anyone else. But remember when I said that Jonathan, among others, weren't really the puzzle kings of this season? Well, once again, Jonathan discovers that solving puzzles is a bit of an Achilles heel for him because he does not solve the puzzle first. He gets there first, but the winner of the challenge, solving the puzzle faster than anyone else, not Lindsay either, even though she had the advantage. No, indeed, the winner is Mike. Mike has won this immunity challenge. Now, remember when we said earlier, Mike had an immunity idol. Now, suddenly, he's got an extra immunity. So he's got a little extra protection. What's he going to do with that extra protection? We're going to find out real quick. Not only has Mike won immunity, but now he gets to eat. And of course, no one ever eats alone in Survivor. He gets to take one other person along with him. And he chooses Jonathan. The bromance is alive for at least a little bit longer. So Jonathan is going to go along and eat with Mike. Not a good sign for Lindsay, right? And I think the writing's starting to show up on the wall for Lindsay at this point in time. Now, if I'm Mike, I've got to think, if I'm trying to choose between Jonathan and Lindsay at this point, again, I think Romeo is probably pretty safe, and I don't really see Marianne being Mike's target either. So if I'm having to choose between Jonathan and Lindsay, if I'm Mike, I'm thinking it's a lot more likely that Jonathan would be willing to take me to a final three as opposed to Lindsay, who seems a little bit tighter with Marianne. So for that reason alone, I would probably stick with Jonathan, just as it seems like Mike is doing. And probably while I'm eating dinner with Jonathan, maybe extract some promises from him in exchange for me perhaps giving Jonathan the idol when we get to tribal council later the evening. That's what I was thinking. I think there's a lot of strategy in making this final pick. And it seems like Mike has kind of cast his lot with Jonathan based on who he's selected. But meanwhile, we've got Lindsay and Marianne and Romeo back at camp talking. And it seems like they're all talking about voting for Jonathan to send him out the door. No surprise. I don't think anyone expects anything else. But the concern they have is that they know Mike's got the idol. They now know he has immunity as well. So the concern is that is the bromance going to reach the point where Mike's going to go ahead and throw his idol, his extra immunity to Jonathan, and force the vote to then come down to Marianne and Lindsay and Romeo. And remember, Marianne has a idol as well. So really suddenly it comes down to Lindsay and Romeo. So that's what they're worried about. And then Marianne, she's convinced that Mike is giving his idol to her because he said he would at some point, and she's believing him. Surely not, right? I mean, I guess it depends on how Mike wants to play the end game on this thing, but Marianne seems much more certain that he's going to give her the idol than we as viewers probably expect, having seen that Mike's made a lot of kind of promises to a lot of different people, and even if not outright promises, some offers of loyalty, etc. He kind of hinted earlier in the episode to Lindsay that if he had the opportunity, I think he said, look, if I know I'm safe, then yeah, I may throw that idol your way as well. So he's kind of hinted to Lindsay he's going to do it. He's told Marianne he's going to give her the idol. Now he's taking Jonathan to eat lunch with him. Mike's trying to stay tight with a whole lot of people, which is tough to do when there's only 5 of you. But Marianne's convinced that she's going to get the idol from him, and we will find out. Meanwhile, Lindsay has decided that her only chance of survival at this point in time is to put an absolute guilt trip on Mike and just do everything she can to make him feel guilty and maybe hold on to keep her for just a little bit longer. And she tries it. And we hear Mike saying that she reminds him of his own daughter and he doesn't want her to go. And again, he's made some so almost promises that maybe he would try to keep her safe. I'm not sure how much of it's the edit from the producers and how much of it is truly Mike trying to keep tight and friendly with as many people as possible. But it certainly leads to a little bit of uncertainty about just what he's going to do going forward. And with all that going on, we have Marianne, who's still trying to play the strategic game that we saw developing over the last few weeks. Marianne's considering the possibility that she could play her idol on Lindsay, and because she wants to protect Lindsay, she'd like to go ahead and hold on to her a little bit longer, and so she's thinking about that. Now that's a little gutsy. Not that anyone wants Marianne out the door. I don't think she's the top target of anyone, but if Mike did give that extra idol to Mike, so that the two of them are safe, and suddenly Marianne gives an idol to Lindsay to protect her, well, then it could come down to Romeo and Marianne as the only choices of the tribal council. So from Marianne's standpoint, she wants to protect the people that she thinks give her the best chance to make it to final tribal and to win the whole thing. But you take a little bit of risk if you give up that protection, which I really think she needs at this point in time, just in case, just because you don't know what everyone else is going to do. All right, so with that being said, on to tribal. We're getting ready to go from final 5 down to the final 4, and we've got Lindsay arguing, saying, "Look, my social game, my strategic game is bad. Yeah, I'm a good competitor from the competition standpoint, but everything else about me horrible. I don't know what's going on." And she had tried earlier. She seemed upset with Jonathan earlier in the episode, saying, "Look, why didn't y'all include me on this plan to get out Romeo? I thought we were part of an alliance." And Jonathan keeps saying to her, saying, "Well, you voted to send me out the door. I'm not sure that still constitutes an alliance." I get it from Jonathan's standpoint. I think Lindsay probably needs to let it rest at this point. I think the alliance has kind of gone away. We saw last episode the two of them both gunning for each other while trying to make it appear in front of each other that wasn't the case. But Lindsay, with that in mind, is talking about tribal council, saying, "Look, I didn't even know about Romeo that last week. Obviously, I'm not playing much of her strategic game." Lindsay's very much offering up the, "Oh, woe is me. I haven't done anything correct. I'm such a horrible player." Jonathan's not buying it. He said, no, everyone loves you. You may have missed things here or there, but you got more friends over there on that jury. Jonathan's not letting her get away with trying to argue that she's not a strong threat from a social gameplay standpoint. So we have a little discussion with that, but then it comes down to the vote. And before the votes are read, this is the last time to play a couple of these idols. And we do see an idol being played. We see Mike playing his idol on Marianne. Yeah. Marianne called it. I would not have guessed that at the beginning of the episode, or any time up until this very point, that he actually would turn around and play this idol on Marianne. She said he would, and he has done just that. He's played his idol on Marianne, and so it really, at this point in time, I think comes down to a Lindsay versus Jonathan vote, and it turns out by a 4-1 vote, Lindsay's out the door, and the one vote obviously being Lindsay voting against Jonathan. So everyone else has voted to send Lindsay out, and Lindsay was a strong competitor. I think the writing was on the wall. She just didn't have quite have the support that she needed this week. And now Marianne didn't play her idol. She held on to it, but she was safe with the one that Mike played on her instead. Keep that in mind, all right, when we get to the final tribal. So Lindsay is out the door. Now here's what's interesting. Trying to figure out Mike's thinking that he ended up playing the immunity idol on Marianne. Did he know that Jonathan was safe? I kept saying Jonathan versus Lindsay. Out on the island, did everyone know that Lindsay was enough of a target that Mike felt very comfortable that Jonathan was safe? And with that in mind, was he then playing the idol on Marianne just to kind of fulfill a promise, to build a little bit more credit, trust, faith with Marianne, knowing that his main bro was safe? I kind of think maybe that was the case. And if so, hey, brilliant job. Props to Mike for thinking that through and taking an action that hadn't really dawned on me until he did it. So there you go. So now we're down to the final 4, and we're going to go right into another immunity challenge. And this is one of the fun ones. This is an iconic competition on Survivor. The wire track, dropping a ball, takes 15 seconds or so to get to the bottom. As when it does, you got to grab the ball, stick it back up, do it again. Doesn't sound that hard until you have to start putting multiple balls there. There's a little track that means the ball comes out in one slot one time, the other slot the other time, back and forth, back and forth. It's one of those, if you just for a second stop paying attention, such an easy task that suddenly your game is over. Because if the ball drops at any point in time, you're out of the game. So it's I just love this challenge. Now with Lindsay gone, who's a big target at this point in time? I got to think it's Jonathan. Again, I think Romeo's got a bit of a free pass. I think Jonathan, just because he's such a competition beast, probably is a target, but we're going to find out. The winner of this immunity challenge controls a lot of what happens going forward, because whoever wins, first of all, is guaranteed a spot in the final 3 tribal council, but they also decide who gets to go to tribal council with them, and which other 2 have to compete against each other for a fire challenge. So obviously, certainly the biggest immunity challenge of all. So they start rolling the balls. Almost immediately, Mike is out. He just didn't quite grab the ball right. It fell out of his hands. Mike is upset with himself, and I don't blame him. You're talking about $1 million prize if you play this thing right. But Mike is out. Soon after that, Marianne is out. So it comes down to Jonathan versus Romeo. And it's Romeo. Romeo wins his first individual challenge. Congratulations to Romeo. I said his first individual challenge, immunity, reward, everything. I don't think Romeo had won anything before this point in time. He picked a good time to win. So congratulations to Romeo. I still think that he probably gets beat by anyone else going into a jury vote. But this is certainly a resume builder when he absolutely needed a resume builder. So Romeo's won. He holds all the power. Who's he going to send to the fire making challenge? And by making that decision, who's going to sit next to him in the final 3 tribal council? At this point, you got to be thinking about who has the most jury votes if you're sitting next to that person, right? And it's such an interesting concept, because the person that you think is the biggest threat, do you put them in the fire making challenge? And if that's the case, do you then worry about the other person that's going to sit next to you versus going to fire making challenge? Do you put the person in the fire making challenge that you think has the best chance of beating your biggest threat? Or do you go strictly based on who you think you can beat in that tribal council? A lot of variables that go into play at this point in time. But the problem at the end of the deal, I just don't think Romeo beats anyone else. Even with this win, this resume builder, I think Romeo's kind of drawing dead at this point in time. But he's going to do what he can. Now, I'm thinking when you come right down to it at this point, it seems like Marianne's pretty good terms with everyone on this jury. So if I'm Romeo, I'm thinking that Marianne maybe has the best social game with the rest of the jurors. Does that come into play when he's making this decision? Well, maybe so, but we've got everyone plotting a little bit. Mike's figuring he's going to almost certainly be picked to be the fire making, compete in the fire making challenge. So rather than even trying to argue otherwise with Romeo, he's trying to convince Romeo to go ahead and send Marianne to the challenge instead. Saying, at least that way, if you send Jonathan up against me, then one of us is still going to be left to go against you. And you got Marianne, who's such a strong player. But if you put her against me, either Marianne or myself are gone. Mike definitely wants to go up against Marianne versus Jonathan. We see Jonathan trying to start fires and seeming to do a pretty good job of it, pretty quick with his fire making skills. So Mike doesn't want to go up against Jonathan. He's trying to convince Romeo for that. And meanwhile, Marianne is hoping just the opposite. She's hoping that Jonathan and Mike are go against each other, and hoping that Jonathan actually wins. Marianne's biggest, I think she thinks her biggest threat is probably Mike at the end of this thing. So she's kind of hoping that it's Jonathan and Mike going against each other. Now, some seasons we see this where someone feels like they need enough bump on their resume that they want to go into the fire making challenge. so they can win it and win their way into that final three. Marianne, she's feeling comfortable enough. She doesn't even want to do that. She's perfectly happy to get drug along to the final three tribal council by Romeo instead. It says a lot about her confidence and her confidence that she can provide an argument to win this thing at the end if she can just make it to one of those final three seats. So with that said, Romeo has selected Mike and Jonathan to compete in the fire building challenge. So Marianne has gotten her wish. She's going to be sitting next to Romeo. We've got one more spot to fill in that tribal council. And so we go straight to the fire making challenge. Mike's a firefighter, but he knows a lot about fire. He obviously knows a little bit about fire making as well, because he starts off, he finally gets the flame going. He just starts piling on sticks. It seems like Jonathan's trying to be a little more careful, do a little nice geometric teepees and all that. Mike's just throwing on as much kindling as he can, and it works. Pretty soon he's got a bonfire going, burns through the twine. Mike has won his final spot into the final three. So final three tribal council for Survivor Season 42 is going to be Mike and Marianne and Romeo fighting it out in front of the jury to see who the sole survivor is. Congratulations to Jonathan, who finishes in fourth place. I kind of like fourth place finishers in these reality TV competitions. So I think Jonathan played a great game. He probably had a little bit bigger target on his back because he was such a strong physical threat. And if he'd been able to solve puzzles a little bit better, he may have had a little bit more chance to get to the end. But I really enjoyed watching Jonathan play this season. So congrats on a fourth place finish. But now we're down to a final three. We're almost there, guys. We do see the final three now, tribal council, and we see a little bit of each other playing little mind games with each other. But pretty quickly we get to the final three. And I got to say, this final three, we've got the old guy, we've got the passionate lover of the game, and we've got the underdog. I see a little bit of old boss hog in each of these three players. And so I'm really happy to see each of the three of them make it to the final. They each have their own story to tell. And I think at one point they talked about in the episode saying, isn't it amazing that we're the final three and yet we're so different from each other. And that truly is. And that's one of the reasons I love Survivor, Big Brother, some of these reality shows is there's not just one path to get to the end. Different people coming into this game hopefully are cognizant about their strengths, their weaknesses, and they can make that work to their advantage. And as a result, we have a lot of different people taking different paths, but it's gotten all three of these down to that final tribal council. So salute and congratulations to all three of them. So we start getting the jury asking questions, and it has to do with competition, social game, integrity, everything that we see every season people asking about. Now, some seasons we've seen really kind of bitter juries, right? Not so much this season. I really feel like the people were looking for answers. They asked very good questions, and they were looking to see how well each of these final three were willing to defend their positions, to explain their positions, et cetera. I thought the jury did a great job asking these questions. As far as the answers from the final three, Mike did okay, but I feel like he got tripped up a little bit because he was a big advocate of honesty and integrity, and the handshake means everything. I've heard that before, right? That was kind of how he played his game. And yet there were times when you're playing a game like this where you have to be, it's about betrayal and misleading and mistrust and all that. And I'm not sure that Mike in the beginning really owned up to it the way that the jury was wanting him to. Later, he kind of backed off and said, yeah, maybe I wasn't as playing with as much integrity and honesty as I thought. So he tried to own it at the end, but I think it was a little bit too late for him. Marianne, she did a great job. I think she did a good job of explaining what she had done, everything else. And I really think that she won the jury when she revealed that idol that she could have so easily played at the final five just because. But instead, she never said a word to it. what a great moment in the final three tribal council when she pulls out that immunity idol and says, look, no one even knew about this. I had this in place. Mike had already said he'd play the idol on me. She basically points out that she had all bases covered, that she knew that she was going to be safe at Final Five and be able to make it to Final Four. I think she won the jury with that one argument. You could see the look on everyone's faces when she pulled out that immunity idol. Well done, Marianne. Yes, indeed. So Marianne did a great job. And then Romeo, he maybe didn't always have the strongest arguments. Again, I think his resume was probably weaker than the other two. But I also feel like Romeo came across as the most sincere, the most honest of the final three. I mean, he just, his responses seemed heartfelt, and I think a lot of people related to what he was saying. I just don't think his resume was quite there to win the final thing. But I applaud Romeo for kind of owning what he did well, and a lot of stuff that maybe he talked about the fact I didn't want to play from the bottom. I didn't want to play from a position of being the underdog, of being weak, but that's what I was dealt, and I had to do it. And I applaud that. He is the underdog, and yet he made it to the end. So, who deserves to win? The person who fought every step of the way and was constantly a threat of going home, such as Romeo, or someone who maybe was in a little bit better position of power and made it all the way as well. Again, a lot of different paths from different players. So we've got all three who did a pretty good job. And again, the jury, I thought, did a good job as well. But at the end, there can only be one winner. And this season, season 42, by a 7-1 vote, 1 vote for Mike, 7 votes for Marianne. Marianne won Survivor. Congratulations to her. Y'all watch my recaps. You know I was a Marianne fan from just about the very beginning. I love the joy that she had playing this game. I love the way she would laugh and smile, and she just seemed so happy and excited to be on the island and playing the game. And I can relate to that so much. So I enjoyed watching her play. And then she surprised me as we started seeing more and more of her strategic thinking and her strategic moves. At the beginning, I thought she was just kind of there to enjoy the experience, but probably not expecting a whole lot of really strategic work. And she proved me wrong. And another part I love about these shows is people that prove you wrong. And she certainly did that, because not only did she enjoy playing the game, but she was a hell of a strategic player as well. So congratulations to Marianne. I am incredibly happy for her. I'm happy for Mike as well, coming in second place. Hey, the old guy did pretty well this season. I always like seeing that. Again, 2 hours long. It seemed like such a short season in a lot of ways because everything is so accelerated. But I enjoyed it. I think the twists this season weren't, for whatever reason, it didn't seem like they were quite as forceful as even season 41. Even the hourglass, I was a little more comfortable with it this season. And so I think everything went well. Casting did a fantastic job with these castaways. I just enjoyed all of them. So there you have it, guys. Marianne is the winner of Survivor season 42. It's on to season 43, right? We'll see what happens next season. I can't wait. But I got a little big brother between now and the next season. I'm excited about that as well. Guys, I've had a blast doing the recaps. I'm sure I'll be back again for season 43. Until then, have a great one. SKD 143. Cheers, my friends. Bye.